Hello guys, and welcome back to another cold episode. On today's episode, another ban list. I know, there was literally one 9 days ago. Okay, less than that, but but still, I can't count. New limited list because of the new selection packs. A new selection pack, I should say. The new selection pack contains cards like Rise Heart, Turbulence, Rescue Ace, stuff like that. And of course, Thrust. Why is Thrust coming to Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel? No one likes this card. That's not entirely true, but I personally hate it, and so do a lot of people, because it's honestly just a terribly designed card. We'll talk about that in a second. First and foremost, ban list time. Pressure Planet Wraith Soth, 1, and Tier Cash, also to 1. I did expect some sort of limitation to Tier Limit Cash Tira, but not yet. I haven't even gotten the card in Master Duel. Why is this limited? Now granted, it's a very strong card, but now I genuinely do think that Tier is dead. I do not think that there is a way that Tier can realistically play the game, especially with Kashtira being at full power. Like, yes, the 1 Pressure Planet Wraith Soth does technically matter, it does hurt their consistency, but in all realistic worlds, it can still basically do the same thing. Especially with even with just the 1 Wraith Soth, you're still able to search out additional monsters, but more specifically, we still have access to triple Unicorn and triple Kashtira Theosis, as well as multiple Arise Heart and multiple Shangri-Ira. So, yeah, it's basically still at full power. Yes, we don't have Diablosis, but this is just weird. No, granted, I do think that Pearly does have the ability to contest this at the very least, so, you know, it's a 2-deck format instead of a 1-deck format, but who cares? What? I understand that Konami really, especially in Japan, the Konami that handles the OCG really doesn't like Tier, because it's been around for so very long, but this seems very much so like overkill. Yeah, just seems a bit much, just given the fact that we haven't even gotten the card and they're already limiting it, and as you know, I already don't like these. However, all in all, sure, whatever. I would have liked to have seen a Rise Heart actually limited to 1. I think that changes the way that Kashtira plays a lot more, and I don't really like consistency hits. I prefer to hit the actual problematic cards or the boss monsters. I find those to be more problematic than necessarily having a consistent strategy. In fact, I thoroughly enjoy consistent strategies, so the fact that Kashtira becomes more inconsistent is just annoying, more so than anything, because now it feels like you're less likely, or you're more likely to be like sacked by them, and it just doesn't feel as good to play against, right? So there's that. Moving on though, going back to Triple Tactics Thrust, there's a big problem with Thrust, and I'm going to quickly explain this by hopping over to a deck list showing you what actually Thrust accomplishes. Alright, so here is an example of some of the many cards that you could possibly choose from to either outboards or interact with the opponent or start combos because your opponent decided to interact with you. That's it. They just chose to activate a card such as Ash Blossom, such as Maxi, in any phase of the game, and now you get access to something like a Foolish Burial, or a Dimension, or a Branded Fusion, maybe Pot of Prosperity to search additional cards, or heck, just draw 2 with Pot of Desires. Or you could even find board breakers like Evenly Matched or Ultimate Slayer, because your opponent decided to activate that standby phase effect in order to get additional cards onto their side of the field because they need to, because that's how their deck functions. Heaven forbid they do that, because now you get full combo. Do you see the problem with Thrust? Thrust is interesting in concept, but in practice it tends to lead to very sacky games, where honestly, 3 Thrust just kind of means any of these other cards that out a lot of boards. I mean, Herald of the Abyss is right there. Great. Nice Noir, it's now gone, right? And lots of other cards like that. It really is just a poorly designed card by all stretch of the imagination. Thrust and Triple Tack can both be used in the same turn. Basically, if your opponent decides to interact with you, like for example, by negating or by banishing or by doing anything with a monster, you now have the ability to potentially find 2 steals, right? Things like Change of Heart, which I don't have here. things like triple tack, things like what have you, right? You could potentially go, your opponent activates a card effect during the main phase, right? For example, in Ash Blossoms to stop your search card. Great, now I get to go triple tack, steal a monster, and then also I get to go thrust for Change of Heart to grab another monster. Great. Now I have 2 monsters from your side of the field that are now mine, that I could do with whatever, right? Or, you know, I could grab a Dark Ruler and entirely out your board because it's a whole bunch of monster negates, and now I'm free to do whatever I want. Or, heaven forbid, they're going first and you hand trap them, and then they just get to set Eradicator, and now you're just out of luck. Good luck playing with no spells or traps, right? So, this is where I think Thrust tends to cause issues, because it basically, look at all the limited cards that you could potentially grab. That basically now means that they're at 3 or 4 copies, right? They're at 4 or more copies, which means now Thrust is just an extra out to basically everything. It's really frustrating to have, and it now basically means that on top of all of the other cards, like for example your Ash Blossoms, your Maxis, etc., you're now also adding in 3 Thrust into your deck just as an additional way to like punish your opponent for trying to interact with you. It's really silly, and it's really not a well-designed card, and it basically counteracts a lot of the stuff that you would normally do in Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's kind of just a slapping of the hand and be like, no, I'm gonna play Yu-Gi-Oh!, not you. Or, how dare you try and interact with me? That's not how this game works. And it's like, that's exactly how Yu-Gi-Oh! Works, and it really just is like counterintuitive to how Yu-Gi-Oh! Is supposed to function, at least in my brain. So, sad to see Thrust. I know I'm a little bit late to this because it's already been announced for like a couple of days, but I'm still just sad to see Thrust specifically, as well as I'm more upset to see there's also another ban list on top of this, which I did expect, but I expected just a Rise Heart because that just makes the most amount of sense. But alas, Konami OCG really hates consistency, and yet they give us Maxi. I don't know why they do this. Anyway, it literally doesn't make sense. They're counterintuitive to their own designs, and it is so illogical. But alas, yeah. I wonder what's going to get banned because of Thrust. I would imagine something like Pot of Prosperity. Maybe even Branded Fusion gets banned, because now, hey, you decided to interact with me, I now get my Branded Fusion. So, we'll see how this goes. But yeah, that's going to be it for this episode. Just a real quick one. Thank you guys so much for watching, and remember to always stay frosty. Bye-bye. Shout out to the Frost Guard, my members. Thank you guys so much for the support, and I hope you enjoy the content.